Made in Australia, product of Australia, made from local and imported ingredients. Country of origin labelling is confusing. What does made in Australia actually mean to consumers?
Well, if it's made in Australia, it should be grown in Australia.
If I think it's made in Australia, I think everything's made in Australia, like it's packaged in Australia, grown in Australia.
That everything in it comes from Australia. It's an Australian product, totally.
Well, I hope that it means that it is made in Australia and not from imported goods that come into Australia.
Well, made in Australia, I assume it's made completely in Australia, nothing imported. If it's manufactured or grown, everything.
It means it's made in Australia by Australian with using Australian ingredients.
It means that it's product of Australia and that's what it is, isn't it?
Well, I'm not really sure what it means because made in Australia could be things that are brought in, packed here, or lots of different things. So it's very unclear about made in Australia.
Generally assume that it's grown in Australia as opposed to just packaged and labelled here.
That it's not just the company is Australian, but the product is actually grown in Australia.
That it's grown in Australia and produced totally in Australia.
The truth is, a product labelled Made in Australia does not have to contain any Australian ingredients. A recent survey by consumer group Choice found that 90% of consumers think country of origin labelling is unclear.
Well, that's what they do, isn't it? They just to confuse people.
I don't understand. I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
Again, I don't know. I really don't, because made in Australia could be produced in Australia, then sent overseas to be packed and then brought here, or vice versa, so I don't know.
Made in Australia, produced in Australia could mean a lot of different things as well.
Australian consumers want to know where their food comes from.
Most important because we don't know where it's packaged and how clean the packaging is. I mean, we had this big scare a while ago with the berries. I mean, that was pretty dangerous.
I know the standard of Australian products, that's got a very high standard.
Not all countries have the same standard of for manufacturing as we do in Australia.
Our standards are rather high, and some countries, their standards are not the same as ours. They're not grown the same way.
Oh, I'd like to think Australian food's less contaminated than other countries, better handled, and it's better for Australia, more jobs.
We don't know the standards of other countries, and I think that was proven recently with the fruit.
Of course, we need to know where it comes from. Some of the products from China have got a very bad reputation.
Well, the question of health and safety, and often quality as well.
Food manufacturers often use the word Australia and Australian imagery on products, even if they contain no Australian ingredients, because they know how important this is to Australian consumers.
You've got Billy Tea, Campfire Brew, and no one else does calls tea Billy Tea, do they? Sure. It's just 100% Australian, that is.
Face value, you would think it was Australian.
I would think it's a claim, say, that the traditional Australian brew, I would just say it comes from Australia.
100% sure, because the Billy Tea makes you think it's Australian.
Well, to me it looks like it could be Australian, yeah. It's the government, someone is going to do something about it. It's not that we can't do nothing. I don't understand. I don't know, I don't know what's going on.
Authorised by Richard J. Mulcahy, AUSVEG.